Good morning and good afternoon. I'll be largely talking on policy issues, how the Malawi ICEMR scientists interact with policymakers and other stakeholders. I think the theme has been recurring to say research has to be translated into practice. We can't do that if we do not interact with policymakers and other relevant stakeholders, including the donor community. I'll start this presentation by touching on two recent policy decisions that Malawi took. One of them has already been touched on, the introduction of PBO nets and the other new nets. So Malawi recently introduced PBO nets and the other new nets. The other new nets include nets that have two chemicals on them. And good examples are the Interceptor G2 and the Royal Guard. This introduction was due to the ICEMR resistance data that the Malawi ICEMR scientists and collaborators have been collecting over time, since time immemorial. But as far as I know, since maybe 2010 and thereabout, including the papers that my colleagues have also introduced. Also, the malaria vaccine, which World Health Organization talked about. The Malawi ICEMR scientists participated in this work, but also most of the work that is currently being implemented by Malawi scientists looks at PBO nets versus conventional nets and how possibly in areas where the malaria vaccine was implemented. Looking at the Malawi ICEMR team, they've been possibly part of the lead investigators looking at LN durability, which has led to distribution change in distribution cycle. The WHO recommends nets that they should be distributed. This is nationwide mass campaign every 3 years, but data collected from Malawi indicates that nets, be it conventional or long-lasting, do not really last for 3 years, meaning that after 24 months of net distribution, large community or populations are left unprotected. Also, the Malawi ICEMR scientists have been involved in the development of the ICEMR resistance management plan, which guides distribution and deployment of the various malaria interventions. Also, along the same, we have been involved in malaria integration vector control strategy development. You've heard from my colleagues here, Lorraine, Charles, and Carl, talking about the SAC. So this is kind of the new kid on the block, where previously the premise for malaria, be it treatment, be it diagnosis, has been based on under fives. But now we're talking of a shift in malaria prevalence, gametocytes, that these are becoming more prevalent in SAC, which is a new group, which has not been targeted very much with the interventions. So those are some of the things that we've been, the Malawi ICEMR scientists have been involved with. Unfortunately, I cannot move my slides. Let me do something here. I'm stuck on second slide. I think my laptop has frozen because I cannot move the slide. Unfortunately, I'm pressing escape, but I cannot escape.
Okay, Themba, do you want to, we have about 5 minutes left. Are you are you able to talk without the slides, or sorry about that. Your video's off.
So maybe let me talk without the slides moving.
Okay.
So those are some of the recent policy decisions, major policy decisions. But exactly how does the Malawi ICEMR scientists interact with the policymakers? The first process is evidence generation. Once the evidence is generated, this is presented at what we call the technical working groups, and these are several of them, including the malaria vector control technical working group, the epidemiology working group, the M&E working group. This is where the scientists and the experts, including the donors, they make recommendations, which then they push on to the Malaria Advisory Committee, which is the ultimate body which advises the Ministry of Health on whether to change policy or not. Those recommendations then they are presented at national level, which is the ministry itself, which this committee now is an internal committee, which is headed by the Secretary for Health, but also making sure that the economic planning department is available, because any policy change has financial implications attached to them, budgetary issues. It is the ministry which now makes the final decision as to whether policy has to change and adopted. The role of the Malawi ICEMR scientists is to one is to generate evidence, secondly, to participate in the deliberation at technical working group, but also to participate in the Malaria Advisory Committee. And I can say that currently is the Malawi ICEMR scientist, our project team leader, who is Don Matanga, who chairs the Malaria Advisory Committee, which is the ultimate body for decision making. However, in all decision making, because if evidence comes from ICEMR research studies, he cannot participate in the voting. It means that decision is left to the others. So there is an issue of conflict of interest, which normally has to be managed. But how do we succeed to do all these things? The most important critical stage is to make sure that when we are formulating project proposals and research questions, the National Malaria Control Program has to be heavily involved. Secondly, is to continuously make sure that the NMCP is updated. Any changes that are made, be it at TWG or the Malaria Advisory Committee, the reverse process also has to be true, that the Malawi ICEMR scientists have to participate in those discussions so that they can change the research questions on the ground to make sure that they're collecting relevant evidence. Thank you so much.